Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. We're a podcast about board games where we have opinions and conclusions formed on the basis of incomplete information. This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is brought to you by these great Saskatoon businesses: Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street, Dragon's Den Games on 8th Street, and Breakout Escape Rooms on Faithful Avenue. Hey there, I'm your host Norm, and this is Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday, a special weekly episode where a bunch of us content creators come together and let you know what we've been playing, recently. And on this episode are Mozart Games, Dice and Dragons, Board on the Air, The Meeple Dungeon, Meeple and the Moose, The Tabletop Bellhop, Board Game Hot Takes, and Cardboard Conjecture. And I've always mentioned it, so I'll mention it again. In the show notes, there's links to the cast. Check it out. It's fun. And enjoy the podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Chris Morris back again for Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday. If you don't follow me on Twitter already, you can check me out there as Spider Moe. That's Spider with a Y, for some of my insights into board gaming, craft beer, and some random rants and raves. On this week's episode, I want to talk about one of the most hotly discussed games from the last year and a half, Cascadia, from designer Randy Flynn, and published by Flat Out Games, along with AEG. Cascadia was the 2022 Spiel des Jahres Award winner, and that accolade is very well deserved. In Cascadia, players are building an ever-changing ecosystem and placing various animals within that ecosystem. It's a tile-laying game with some pattern building and a sort of an area majority aspect to it as well. Basically, on a player's turn, they are going to take a habitat tile and an animal token from one of the 4 sets that are available on the table. They come in sets, and you have to take both the token and the tile that are with each other, unless you have a nature token that allows you to break up the pair, which I'll explain shortly. The tiles will show you one of 2 habitats, like wetlands, mountains, etc. And there will also be 1 to 3 animals that are printed on the tile, showing what types of animals can live on that specific tile. You'll place your tile first, and then place the animal token that you took, either on that tile or another empty tile that you have in your tableau in front of you. You want to match your habitats up as much as you can, because at the end of the game, players will each score points for the largest of each of the 5 habitats that they've built. There's also some bonus points that if they happen to have the largest of that habitat type amongst all of the players. However, you'll also be scoring for the animals that you've placed during the game, and each animal will score in slightly different ways. There are multiple cards for each of the 5 animal types that are in the game, so you have to build as to what they all want during that game, and you can't bank on a certain strategy every single time. You might score points for each hawk that you have that's not adjacent to any other hawk in your tableau, while your foxes will want to be surrounded by one specific animal type that can't be a fox. Bears might score for each pair of them that aren't adjacent to any other bears, and salmon will usually score based on building runs of them, but the way that they score will change slightly from game to game. There's no way that you can maximize points for both of your habitats as well as the animals that you draft, but you'll need to balance each one out as you add them to your tableau. Each time that you put an animal on a tile showing just a single habitat, you score a nature token, and that can be kept until the end of the game for a point for each one of those that you've collected, or you can cash it in on a later turn to take a token and tile that are not paired up with one another, or you can use it to get rid of all of the animal tokens and refresh the market if you aren't seeing the species that you need at the moment. Because nature tokens are only worth 1 point apiece at the end of the game, it's usually best to spend them if you need to. Although those points could be the difference between winning and losing at the end of the game, so it's not something that you just want to throw away if you don't need to. Cascadia is a great weight for what the game offers. Each turn you have difficult decisions to make, but I never felt like I was agonizing over those choices, and my brain wasn't being twisted inside out, trying to sort out placement and scoring opportunities. There's another game from Flat Out that shares some of the similarities with Cascadia. It's called Calico. But I found it to be way more brain-burning than this one, and I enjoy the space that Cascadia takes up much more due to this. I enjoy thinky games, but I just found that the depth of Calico to be disconnected to its theme. Cascadia is the perfect marriage of theme and weight, in my opinion. Turns can be pretty quick, and the market's always changing, so it's best not to get too attached to the combo that you just drew at the end of your turn, as most likely, it's not going to be there by your next turn in a 4-player game. If yourself and the player in front of you are both competing for the same type of animal, you might struggle quite a bit, and it's not uncommon for players to groan when someone flushes the market just before their turn, or a lot of excitement starts to build up when a salmon finally shows up on the market, even though there is an equal number of each animal in the bag. Those little fish just tend to be slippery, and they never appear when you need them. There's also a solid solitaire mode in the game, as well as an achievement system that can be used to track multiple games, to see who does the best over several games of Cascadia. It's not really a campaign per se, but it does allow for a way to track games over multiple sessions. There's also a family mode that makes scoring much easier for those that are not as into board games as many of us hobbyists. The amount of variability that's contained in this small box really is astounding, and if you haven't given Cascadia a try yet, I honestly feel it's one of the best games that Flat Out has produced so far, and they do have a very good solid history of great games. Another quick little game that I played this week was called Push, and it's a Prospero Hall-designed game of push your luck for 2 to 6 players. It's a simple concept where the active player will reveal cards one at a time from a deck, and they'll place those cards into one of 3 stacks on the table until either they choose to stop or they happen to bust. A player can bust if they cannot add a card to the stack because that stack either has that number shown on the card or the stack also has the color of the card that you drew. It's a really simple concept and one that's more fun than it actually deserves to be. If a player busts, they don't collect any cards, and instead they have to roll the die that's included, and if they roll a color that matches any cards that they've collected previously, they have to discard all of those cards from their game. If the active player didn't bust, they instead take one of the stacks of cards that they created, and they put it in front of them to score at the end of the game. Then each player in turn order will also take one of the remaining stacks of cards left behind, until there's none left. Players will also have to roll the die if any of the cards that they took have the die shown on them too. So there's a bit of a balancing act when you're drawing cards as to which stacks to add them to. Instead of drawing cards on your turn, you can instead choose to bank one of the colors that you've collected, putting them aside and keeping them safe from that die roll should it happen. You might waste a turn, but in return, you will guarantee yourself some points at the end of the game. Once one player does this action, it's not too uncommon for others to follow suit on their turns in order to try to keep pace. Once the draw pile is empty and players take the cards that round, everybody totals up the points that they've collected, and the player with the most points wins. Push is a super quick and wonderful way to kill 10 minutes while waiting for someone to arrive or just to end off a longer game night. It has that one more time feel to it, as players who felt that their luck was all bad hope to reverse their fortunes. It's one of those fun little games that seems to pack more punch than it should, and several people at our table commented that it really is what Uno should have been. Grab yourself a copy if you happen to see it. I doubt you'll be disappointed. Thanks for listening to my thoughts this week about both Cascadia and Push. Let me know on Twitter if you've played either of them, or if you're curious and want to hear more info. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Once again, I am Chris Morris, and thanks for listening. May all of your dice rolls be critical successes.
What up, gamers? I'm Jayson.
I'm Julie, and together we're Dice and Dragons, and you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram at Dice and Dragons, and on Twitter at Dice and Dragon.
And what is it today, Julie?
It's Whatcha Been Playing Wednesdays.
And what game have we been playing?
My Little Pony.
Adventures in Equestria. Now, this is a deck-building game published by Renegade Game Studios, designed by the Renegade Games design team of Dan Blanchett and T.C. Petty III. So this is
It's a cooperative game. We played another cooperative game. Yay!
I think that's what we're going to be playing pretty much till the end of the year right now.
Well, we played a lot of competitive, so it's fine with me. So it's for 1 to 4 players, 45 to 90 minutes, ages 14 and above, but, I think it could be played by younger players.
We both agree it can definitely be played by younger players for sure. There's a lot of resource types which we'll talk about, and you can hear a lot more of our thoughts about the age and the resource types in our review that'll be coming out, I believe, the day after this is released or the same day. I'm not quite sure exactly when this episode will be hitting the streets. So what did you think of this, Julie? We were actually playing an IP that was probably more up your alley than anything we've been playing specifically IP-based recently.
Well, I mean, yes, I played with My Little Ponies when I was like 4 years old, but that was a while ago. And this version really isn't the version that I know. And it's been so long that I really don't remember it much. But that being said, it was nice to play with something lighter and more colorful.
I do like the art. The art is taken from the new Adventures in Equestria TV series, so you should recognize a lot of the stills that are being used. It also fits very well with the deck building game, so if you are a fan of the current iteration, it is very well represented. What did you think of the gameplay, having all the different resources, which is typically a taboo in a deck building game? How did that work for you?
I didn't really have an issue. They worked well. It was an interesting game mechanic. At first when you're explaining everything, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to play this to figure it out. But it wasn't as complicated. Yes, we have some experience with a bunch of different types of deck builders. So, we're not novices, obviously, when it comes to deck builders. But I found it fairly easy to play.
Yeah, the game is definitely easy to play. Managing the resources is where you're going to be getting that ages 14 plus, because the game has 4 different resource types. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that you could actually store resources using different tokens, I think that would be something that could be a big negative for the game and be dragging it down, kind of like when we were playing Scott Pilgrim with 3 different types of resources and the fighting cards to manage, and it just didn't work. This one definitely...
This is no Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, this definitely did a much better job of capturing, I'd say, those resources in a way that's thematic to the property, but also something that is not overly complicated. Now, one of the biggest issues I think that we both did have with the game is the difficulty.
Well, I mean, it's not very difficult, but it varies, right?
Exactly. Because it's a deck builder, depending on the cards that come up, depending on the amount of situations you're using in the deck and when they come up, you could have some fairly challenging games. Or you can have some very easy games. We get one game that was a little bit more challenging than the others because we got situation after situation after situation.
Early in the game, we hadn't had time to build up resources yet.
And other games, we did not see too many situations. The last game we played had all 8 situations. I think we saw 3 out of the 8. And it was not that difficult. We worked together and we won the day. Now, the slogan for My Little Pony is "Friendship is Magic." And how do you feel about the cooperative aspects, the way that you have to work together in the game, as well as the locations? I think we've talked enough about it at that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, they added some complexity about how you can collaborate. Obviously, only being able to use the tokens, at least for situations. And there's some aspects of it that of the different hurdles that you can't do it all for another player. You have to actually both contribute. So it is still a cooperative game, but you're building your deck for your player, right?
Yeah, and you still have to do well. Now, the other players can help you out. There are also some very cool asymmetric abilities that can help out all ponies, which I do really enjoy. But also, that's another thing, not all ponies are created equal. I'd say that out of the 6 ponies we have in the box, there's probably about 4 of them that we like, and the others that we're a little bit more meh on.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the ones with the sugar cubes. We figured out that that was definitely important.
And I did like playing as Rainbow Dash, who could give movement tokens to all ponies, which actually worked fairly well in our favor as well. I found that the other one that had to spend a sugar cube to give out that type of token was not nearly as useful.
No.
But overall, I can say that I enjoyed the game. It's not my IP. I still have fun with it. And yeah, you should definitely check out our review to hear our full thoughts. Anything else you want to add, Julie?
No, I think that's it.
So on that note, we're going to remind you to keep playing games.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Jordan.
And we are Board on the Air, a weekly radio show in Saskatoon. And this is What Have You Been Playing? Tonight we're going to talk about...
After the Empire, a 2-4 player by Grey Fox Games.
Yeah, it's a
castle builder defending your kingdom, basically.
Yeah, there's some worker placement in it. But you're building up your army to defend your walls. And your walls, you're upgrading, you're adding turrets.
You're able to buy refugees that are coming to your city to give you bonuses. Buildings that will give you bonuses.
Yeah, there's some card buying. There's a lot going on in this game. There is and there isn't.
Yes.
Right? It is fairly straightforward. The rules don't seem that complicated.
There's a few things you have to look into, but...
Yeah, it's very tactile because you actually, everything's 3D. The boards are all neoprene.
Yeah, well, the one I have.
Yeah,
I got everything.
You have the deluxe Kickstarter edition of this.
Yeah. So on your turn, there's going to be a few rounds. You're going to do 8 rounds of the game. And each round is going to have 6 different sections. The first section is just prepping for the round, flipping over the first invader card and putting 3 face down and a face down siege, or depending on the round.
Yeah.
You'd always know where one of the invader forces is coming from. The other ones are all hidden.
Yeah. And there's 1 to 4 invader forces.
With a siege equipment.
And 1 siege equipment.
After that, you go into your worker placement phase where you're putting out... In the earlier rounds, 3 workers, then 4, then 5.
Yeah, it's a lot like Lords of Waterdeep, where as you progress, you get an extra worker every couple of rounds.
And you could get another worker if you get sacked by the invaders, but you don't want to do that late. You want to do that more earlier.
You get a temporary worker.
Yeah, a temporary worker for that one round.
Yeah.
But the worker placement spots are pretty self-explanatory. Get resources, recruit more units, buy cards...
Yeah, there's about 8 different spots. 8 to 12 different spots.
Yeah.
Okay, and then...
Then you go into the invader phase, where you flip over all the cards that you have face down for the invaders, and you put them all out on your board. Before you do any of that, I guess you have to assign where your defenders are located on the walls.
You have to pre-assign where you think your invaders are coming from, and either your permanent army or... The mercenaries that you hire, you put out on the walls or inside of your castle.
Yep.
And then you flip over the cards.
And the invaders are going to be either swordsmen or archers. Yeah. And the siege equipment will either be like catapults or siege ladders.
Yeah. And they all behave differently, of course. It's a very cool game. I found most of the... For 7 rounds, I was able to defend myself no problem.
Yes.
The 8th round went horribly wrong. And
it's not that you didn't prepare for it. It's just that the way the cards came out, you had 20 guys coming from one wall.
Yeah, and I was winning up to that point. I don't think I was going to win because you had in-game scoring and I didn't.
Yeah.
But... That last round really punished me, and it left me a little bitter, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, it makes sense, because in this game, if you can't defend your castle, you're going to lose points.
Yeah.
Early on, you're going to lose less points. Like, if you're at 5 gold, as the points are in this game, you go down to 3. Yeah. Not the worst thing. If you're at 42 gold, you go down to 26.
Yeah, it's very punishing the later in the game that you get sacked.
Yeah.
I do want to keep playing it. We've only played it once. But I do want to keep trying it. And I do want to watch a how-to video just to see if we did mess any of the rules up.
Yep.
We do that regularly with every game.
Oh, yeah.
Because as good a readers as we are...
We miss small things.
Little things like with anybody. Anybody that says they play every game perfectly the first time, I think is fibbing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has a tactile feel. It's got an interesting battle mechanic. It's very tight in your moves. Like, you don't have a lot of workers to go out, and there's some certain things that you have to do every round.
Yeah, so that's where maybe in the earlier rounds, like in the second game, we might be more lenient on our defense and just build up, get sacked, and then get that extra one worker for that next round. And
yeah, and that's exactly it. There's almost that early on that tactical, I'm going to get wiped out here just so I can be stronger later.
Yeah. And even how you build up your troops is different. Like, if you're going heavy into mercenaries, you're going to be spending gold on them, but you don't have to feed them. If you're building a standing army, you need to make sure you keep your farms alive so you can keep enough food to feed your standing army.
Yeah, and the way we were playing it is very hard to keep farms alive. I found, at least.
I generally had 2 on the highest level, 1 on the little one, and 1 that was constantly burnt down, but I was constantly going on the space that protected them from the invaders.
Yeah. Yeah, so very neat game. Looking forward to playing it some more. That is After the Empire. I'm David.
And I'm Jordan.
And we will talk to you next week.
Hello, everybody. It's Robb and Anna Marie from the Meeple Dungeon.
Hello.
And we are back again recording for the Whatcha Been Playing Wednesdays podcast. And this week we have a couple games to talk about. What's the first game, Anna Marie?
The first game we're going to talk about is Scout by Kei Kajino, designed by him and published by Oink Games.
Yeah, Scout. This is the new, popular Oink game. This one's crazy popular. It was really hard to get our hands on a copy of this game.
I love this game.
Yeah, you've been mentioning Scout a lot lately.
I just love it.
Yeah, and we finally got copies of it. I think we got 3 or 4 copies, actually.
Well, they're
because we're going to be giving some as Christmas gifts, I believe. But Scout is, it's a fantastic little card game and token game from Oink. And so how does this game play? It's really, really cool. So depending on the player count, the cards will you might
take out a couple
few cards out of the deck.
Yeah.
But overall, this game plays 2 to 5.
2 to 5, yeah.
And you're going to deal out this deck evenly amongst the players. And you're also going to get a little
Scout
token,
and Show.
Scout and Show token in front of you and your hand of cards. And you're going to take your hand dealt to you as is, and you're going to show it to yourself, and you're going to decide whether you want to keep the cards the way they are or flip them upside down and take them the other way, because every card has 2 numbers on it, a 9 and a 7, or a 1 and a 4, or whatever on one side or the other.
And that's such a neat mechanism in that game, because you cannot change the order of the cards. You pick them up.
As they're dealt to you, you've got 2 options.
Yeah.
A side or B side, basically. Yeah. And once you've decided on how you want to start the game, you're going to pick a starting player, give the starting player token to that player, and you begin. And how do you begin? You can do a few different things on your turn.
Yeah, you can play like a set or a run.
Or a single card.
Well, a run, it could be a run of a single card.
Yeah, because you have to picture your hand is going to have this mishmash of cards.
Because you can't organize it at all.
So
they're not in suits, they're not in runs, they're not unless that's how they were picked
magically came that way. Yeah,
you might have a pair together or something.
And ultimately you're trying to empty your hand out to go out to win the round, sort of thing. Or you can also go out if another certain thing were to happen.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, but so you play either a single card, maybe you wanted to play down just a 2 or something that you had that was sitting in a weird spot that you didn't like.
And if you take it out, if you take it out of your hand, it's going to make 2 other cards go nicer together.
Yeah, now they go side by side in your hand. So then I'd play down my 2, and then you would have option to play another single card. If you had a single card that could beat that 2, you'd
so
play
higher.
It down.
So like a 3, 4, 5, any of those.
You could play it down, and you would simply beat my card, and you would take my card, flip it over, and score it as a point.
Yes.
And then we go back and forth doing this. But there's a few different options. So you can play down, like she said, you can play down runs, pairs, or I should say sets of different numbers. And sets always trump
a run.
Runs.
So if there was a run of say 7, 8, 9, and then you put down 3 4s, your 3 4s are going to beat the 7-8-9
And I
run.
would take your 7-8-9, flip them over, and now I've scored 3 points for
Yes.
myself. And you're going to go back and forth doing this. And so that action we're talking about while we're doing that is called the show action. But instead of doing a show action, you can then instead do a scout action. So if you put down the cards, like you said, 7-8-9, and I really needed a 7 in my hand, like to really make something work. I could use the scout action and I could take that 7 and I could slide it into my hand. And remember, the 7 card also has another number opposite.
Maybe a 2 that's on the bottom.
And I could take that card, regardless of what number, I could flip it around, flip it over, and stick it into my hand wherever I like. Or I could even use the 2, right? And throw it in wherever I like, whatever makes sense for my hand. And then if I do that, whoever's hand of cards was on the table at the time, like the cards that were played, yours, you would get a point for that. There's a
little
point
chip token,
that you would get for that. And then it would go back to you and you'd be able to do your thing again. Then there's also an action called Scout and Show. So you could do both things where you wanted to take a card that you saw on the table, throw it into your hand, and then you could play some cards down onto the table to try and beat the cards that are on the table. But then you'd have to flip over this special token that you have.
Yeah, because you can only do the Scout and Show once per round.
Yeah. You flip over your little Scout and Show token to say that I've done that action and I can't do it again this round. And that's all you do is you go back and forth doing this.
Yeah, so you can, like you were saying before, you can win the game, or win the round, I should say, if you go out, like if you have no cards left in your hand. Or let's say, let's say there are 3 of us playing, and I put down a run of 5.
Yes, which would be huge,
right? Everything all fell into place, and you couldn't beat it. You were the next player. You couldn't beat it, so you would scout and take one of my cards. And then the next player couldn't beat it. They would scout and take a card. And it came back to me, and my cards that I laid down were still on the table.
You win.
I would win that round, and then everybody else they would adjust their points, but I wouldn't have to count my points.
And what would happen is basically whenever a round ends, if I trigger the end of a round for either reason, I'm always going to end up with just a bunch of points. But then you and whoever else might be playing is going to have whatever points they've accumulated for the round minus how many cards they have.
Whatever
in their
cards
hand.
are in their hand.
That can be brutal. You could have, say, 7 or 8 points, but have 5 cards left in your hand and only end up with 2 points.
And it doesn't matter the value of the cards.
No, it's just 1 card, 1 point.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the way the game works. And it says to play a round per player. I would recommend with 2 players, you probably want to play more than 2 rounds. It's a little too quick. But at like a 4 or 5 player, I think 4 and 5 rounds is pretty good.
Yeah. Everybody gets to deal once.
Yeah. But I would go 3-4 rounds if you're playing 2 players.
Yeah.
Just to make it a bit longer.
Yeah.
But no, it's a really fun game. The whole idea of not being able to adjust your cards in your hand and then having 2 options of a starting hand depending on what side you want to have up and down. Really like it.
Yeah, this game is fantastic.
It is. It's one of the best Oink games out there, if not the best Oink game we've played.
So good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Highly recommend Scout from Oink.
Yes, me too.
And we also have one other game we've been playing, and that would be Oak from Game Brewer. And this game we're not going to talk about on here because we are in the middle of playing it. It's currently set up on the table right in front of us here. And we are going to be reviewing Oak on the next episode of the Meeple Dungeon podcast.
Yeah, and we just finished doing our
50th
episode, which was a top 10 kind of Christmas gifts.
Game gift ideas. Yes.
So take a listen if you want.
Yeah, check that out. But that's it for this week. So we're going to run, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
See ya.
Hello, my name is Alex, and I write board game reviews over at meepleandthemoose.com, and I'm here to talk to you about the games I played this week for Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday. This week, I'm continuing my recap from my CabinCon experiences. Last week, I talked about a 5-hour play of Gaia Project and a very strange game of Scythe. Today, I'm taking you where my friends never go willingly, into the world of fast food management. But first, being the parent of a toddler, it seems impossible for me to sleep beyond 7 a.m., so as per usual, I was first to rise. I took the morning to walk along the beach. When I came back, I prepped breakfast to make coffee, and I was still the only one awake, so I broke out Bucholtz Star and played a solo game as Rose Blanchette versus Starry Night Sky. I've talked about the bullet games on this podcast before several times, but if you're unfamiliar, Bullet Star and its predecessor Bullet Heart are a puzzly push-your-luck game about matching patterns and clearing discs, or pulling bullets off of your player board. Each character, which each box, both Heart and Star, contain 8 different characters, each with their own special abilities and patterns, offer an incredibly varied gameplay experience. The solo mode pits you against a boss, which every character has a boss mode on its reverse side, meaning that if you have both boxes, you'll have 16 characters to pick from and 16 boss challenges to throw yourself against. Basically, you pull bullets from a bag, place them on your player board, hope they don't fall all the way to the bottom, which would hit your heart points. You can spend action points to manipulate the bullets on the board and use your patterns to clear bullets, sending them to the boss. If you manage to send enough bullets to break all the boss's shields, you'll win. If you get hit with enough bullets, you'll die. And dying is bad. Starry Night Sky was a bit of a weird boss. Their pattern requires that you don't have a single bullet of a specific number on the turn that you break one of their shields. If you do, then you just automatically lose a life. At the same time, you can't just go wild and breaking shields, as if you break more than one shield in a round, you'll lose a life. Rose Blanchett's special ability was that she can rotate your patterns by 90, 180, or 270 degrees. But I've been so conditioned to believe that you absolutely cannot rotate your patterns that I completely forgot to do it for the whole game. I promptly lost the solo game, but I always enjoy exploring the different bosses and characters. And that was Bullet Star, designed by Joshua Van Langenham and published by Level 99 Games. The next game we played was Food Chain Magnate by Jerome Duman and Joris Wiersinga, published by Splotter Spellin. Now, Food Chain Magnate is my favorite game of all time, and I've already written a lot of words about how much I like it, so check out my blog for my full review of this game. But here is a quick recap on how to play. Food Chain Magnate is an economic game where the player with the most money wins. Players are running competing fast food chains, competing to satisfy the desires of your small community. At the start of the game, players only have themselves, the CEO. The CEO only has one ability: hire a new staff member. There are 8 different workers that can be hired directly, all with different upgrade paths and abilities. The pricing manager lowers prices, the recruiting girl hires more people, the trainer upgrades workers, the errand boy and the kitchen trainees both produce different kinds of goods, the management trainees allow you to work more staff at once, and the marketing trainees put up advertisements which produce demands on the houses that they affect. Players take turns hiring and working their staff, slowly branching out in different directions. The trick of the game is that when a house demands goods, anyone can fulfill their order. If multiple restaurants can fulfill their order, the house will choose to go to whichever restaurant is the closest and with the lowest prices. If you drop your prices to the floor, people from the far corners of the town will flock to your restaurant, but you'll only be making pennies per product you sell. It's a delicate balance, and remember, money is points. And that's the basics of Food Chain Magnate. Adverts produce demands on houses, restaurants produce food, houses consume that food, everybody profits. Now, in this particular game, we included a couple expansion modules, the coffee shops being the most important one. The coffee shops is a weird little twist in that houses will never want coffee explicitly. They won't travel to your restaurant just for coffee. But if you have coffee and they pass by your doors on the way to another location, they'll stop in for a quick cup of joe. The first 4 rounds of the game are generally quick. I know some people complain about rote openings, but I don't mind them personally. In my game group, 2 players generally take advantage of the recruiting girl strategy, while the 2 others take the trainer, and from there, the strategies diverge. I quickly put up a burger billboard in the top left corner on a house with a garden, with the expectation that players would fight over delivering to that house, and then I would cash in on the coffee sales. Unfortunately, Bear beat me to placing his coffee shop right on their driveway, but thankfully, Bigfoot won the bidding war and sold the burger, which ran right by my restaurant, still allowing me to sell my coffee. Bigfoot and I hit $100 on the same turn, which means that we both obtained a bonus CFO, which increased the amount of money that we earned each round by 50%. Bigfoot placed a park in the lowest corner, touching 2 more houses, increasing the amount of money that was coming in each round. A mailbox campaign also started generating interest on those houses, so I put a second coffee shop up right next to Bigfoot's restaurant. Now I would sell 2 coffees to each of those houses each time they ate at Bigfoot's Blue Bar, and I picked up the luxuries manager, and then my strategy was set. What I didn't anticipate was our CEOs dropping to 2 open management slots when the bank broke for the first time, reducing the number of staff that we could play. I had such grand plans to play trainers and generate coffee at the same time, as my coffee production was still low. So should I skip producing coffee for a round and let my trainers work? so that I can produce even more coffee in future rounds? Or should I eschew the luxuries manager and take more money and train? It can be quite hard to know which way to go sometimes, and in the end, I succeeded at selling 3 coffees at a base price of $20 to houses with gardens, making it $40 per coffee, and my CFO worked his financial wizardry to turn that into $180 on a single turn. Bigfoot was selling several goods, but at the base price of $7 plus a $5 benefit to some goods. The bank broke just in the nick of time, as one more turn would have spelled disaster for my luxury coffee strategy. One more round and Bigfoot would have doubled my income easily. As it stood, the game ended with me in the lead with $395 and Bigfoot with $362. This play left players a little bit salty on the coffee modules, claiming it's a bit too hard to counter. Unlike selling food to houses, you need to ensure that you have the demand and that you're selling it less or closer to your opponents. But there's no way to steal someone's coffee sale. The combo of the luxuries manager with the coffee seems incredibly strong. My rebuttal is that my coffee production wouldn't scale. I'm lucky the game ended when it did, as one more turn would have dropped me to second place. Food Chain Magnate has no randomness. A big part of doing well in the game is being able to correctly identify what your opponents are going to do and cash in on their actions. In any case, I really enjoyed myself, but as I always do when I play Food Chain Magnate. And that's all I have to talk about this week. For more board game reviews, check out my blog, meepleandthemoose.com, and have a happy Wednesday.
Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Bellhop segment of Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday. I am Moe T, the Tabletop Bellhop, your cardboard concierge, helping you make your game nights better. Now I got 3 games to talk about this week, starting with our first play of the Belgian Beers Race, which was published as a collaboration between BRY Games and Grand Gamers Guild, who I have to thank, along with one of our awesome Patreon patrons, for getting a review copy to me from Gen Con. Now, the Belgian Beers Race is an action optimization time track-based Euro game all about taking a 3-day hiking trip around Belgium and tasting some of the best beers in the world. Now, I gotta say, this game had my name all over it, and I basically begged Mark Spector to let me give it a try. I am a huge beer fan, and more importantly, in this case, a Belgian beer fan. Now, if you know what I mean when I say Trappist beers, and you listen to this podcast, so I know you're a board gamer, you need to pick this game up. Enough said. Now, for the rest of you, gameplay is pretty straightforward. You spend time units to move around Belgium and visit breweries where you can buy beer and cheese, do beer tastings, collect glassware and coasters, and so on. Now, a big part of this game is choosing how to move between these breweries, which is a huge part of this. You can bike, which is reliable and can actually sober you up if you take a long enough bike ride, as long as you haven't had too much in the first place and can't ride. Now, public transit, which has the possibility of running late, is another option, and you could end up taking a bit more time, but it does give you a chance to drink some of the beers you picked up. That's got to be a Belgian thing. That doesn't work here in Canada. Hitchhiking is the third option, which is in general the fastest way to get around, but can be random. You've got to roll some dice and see if anyone picks you up. And the odds are not great. You got a 50-50 chance the first time, and then it improves the multiple times you go on a row. So hitchhiking can be the quickest way around, but it isn't always reliable. Now, along with this movement system is an interesting sobriety system and various end game and in game goals to kind of give you direction on where you should be heading. There's also rewards for getting to the first places, getting to a brewery first before other players, and it mixes up each game which breweries are going to give those rewards. Now, there's also a fun mechanic where if 2 players meet up at the same brewery, they have to give each other a beer from their backpack and do a toast. Now, scoring overall is very much a point salad with all kinds of different ways to score points, including, of course, tasting different beers, for toasting other players, for visiting specific breweries and brewery type, for collecting a massive amount of cheese, and so on. Now, while we found the board to be a bit busy, and I gotta admit, I don't love the art until I found out that it was actually done by a Belgian beer label maker, which moved it a step up. It's not the clearest. It's a little hard to see from across the board. And the rules were originally in French and have been translated, and there's some odd wording there. Like, they're definitely not the worst rules I've ever read, but it was worth checking Board Game Geek for the rules FAQs and some corrections and clarifications. Once we had everything down, though, the gameplay in this game is a lot of fun. It even had some thematic feels going to it as well. And dropping the theme, yes, even the one player in our group who doesn't drink beer really enjoyed this game. Honestly, once you get the rules down, like once we played half a round, the next time we play this game, it is going to fly. I honestly think this is about a step above Ticket to Ride. As long as you have someone there that's played before and that can kind of teach you the different movement types and when you roll the dice and when not, and how to do the scoring. You get a really simple game here. Now, at this point, I've only played once, right? I'm not ready for a full review. That's going to be a couple weeks. The one thing I am worried about is after multiple plays, if this will start to feel the same, that you're doing the same thing every game, or perhaps there's a strategy that stands out as a perfect way to play, like a certain set of those points to get. For example, I know some Board Game Geek people talking about a broken cheese combo. Haven't figured that one out myself. So stay tuned in coming weeks as I talk more about the Belgian beers race. Now, next up was Black Brim 1876. This one was sent to us from Puzzling Pursuits and is very much a puzzle box, escape room in a box style game. Now, last Sunday, our entire family sat down to play the first of 2 parts that are included in the box, and we had a great time. Unlike many other puzzle games we played, this particular one features, at least in part 1, 5 different puzzles to be solved, each of which is independent. They're each their own thing, where you need the solutions to all 5 to unlock the second part of the game. This is awesome because it let all 5 of us try our hand at solving our own puzzles. Like right at the beginning, we put them out on the table. Like, who wants the newspaper? Who wants the cryptograph? Who wants the pictures, the postcards? And everyone kind of got to do their own thing, which of course then led to swapping the puzzles around, a couple players working on one puzzle together. And in the end, once we had 4 of the puzzles solved, all 5 of us working on the final one together and eventually figuring out the solution. That was awesome. I love the fact that all of us got to do our own thing and be involved. And honestly, as a family experience, this was so much better than some of our past experiences, which are more of the kids fighting over who got to hold the cards. And is it my turn to read yet? Or can I play with the app? Can I do the thing? With everyone having their own thing to do, it was just a much more enjoyable experience. And to that end, my wife Deanna and my mother-in-law Brenda have already declared this is their favorite escape room style game we play. And honestly, we played a lot of them. I'm not going to get into them here, but if you go over to the blog and click on reviews and start scrolling through, you're going to find quite a few escape room mystery style games that we review. So that's pretty high praise from them. Now, we haven't finished yet, so final review still pending. Next Sunday, we're probably going to finish this up. So if we finish it up this coming Sunday, I should have a final formal review ready for our next podcast recording, which is a week from today on Wednesday. Now, speaking of podcast recordings, my last gameplay for this week is Cowboy Bebop Space Serenade, a deck-building card game that Japanime Games was awesome enough to send out our way. Now, I got in a couple plays this past week, 1 2-player with Sean and 1 3-player with Sean and Deanna, and I've had 3 plays before that at other player count. These plays were honestly in prep for our review segment for tonight's show this Wednesday, where we're going to be reviewing Racco and this anime-inspired card game. Now, honestly, what it'd be best is if you just joined us for our live show tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitch, twitch.tv/Tabletop Bellhop for the full review. But just in case you can't, and I don't want to leave you hanging, if you can't do that, I will just say here, Cowboy Bebop Space Serenade, a deck building game, is fantastic. It is one of the best deck building games I've ever played. And I love deck building games. I've been playing them since Dominion, and I played all the big ones that have come out since. Features their rotating market, Star Realms like combo system. Star Realms like combo system, asymmetric player power, something I love in any game. Board game like movement system where you're flying to different planets. And most importantly, this fantastic thematic forced cooperation in a competitive game system. I don't know a better way to word that, where you are going to other planets and you can force other people to move with them and you can use their special abilities, whether they want you to or not, to score, bag the criminal. I loved the feel of that. That felt very Cowboy Bebop, and it was really neat. Now, I will say, the 3 of us playing these last 2 rounds, we're all Bebop fans, and we love it as Bebop fans. But I've also played this with people who have never seen the anime or the Netflix show, and they loved this game as well. It's just a really solid deck builder. Even without the review tonight. If you're a Bebop fan, pick it up. If you're a deck building fan, pick it up. Now, if you want to know more, again, tune into our live recording tonight, or wait for our podcast to drop next Tuesday, or watch for the written review and video reviews, which will be going live on YouTube and our blog. Well, that's it for the games I've been playing this past week. Remember, you can always find our content at tabletopbellhop.com, and you can find me on what feels like 87 different social media sites with the Twitter diaspora going on. If you're on a site, I'm probably there. Tabletop Bellhop, one word. And reach out anywhere. Thank you for joining me tonight for the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast. I am Moe T. Good day and game on.
Hey there, this is Tim from the Board Game Hot Takes podcast. This week on my table, I've had a little remake of a classic game. You've probably all heard of Castles of Burgundy. Well, this was the Castles of Burgundy, the card game. And I've been interested in trying this for a while. Castles of Burgundy is a big hit around my household. Played a lot with my wife, my friend Jen. Lots of games of Castles of Burgundy going on around here. And I happened to be in a half-price books this weekend. First time walking in there. Didn't really know what to expect. There were some cool deals in there. But one of the deals I found was a unsealed copy of the Castles of Burgundy, the card game, for only $6.99. Now, like I said, heard decent things about it. It seems like a no-brainer. So I picked it up, busted it out, figured out how to play in about 5 minutes. And this game was pretty good. It was very reminiscent of Castles of Burgundy, obviously, trying to remake that thing. The biggest difference between the two was that your action selection, instead of rolling 2 dice and using those 2 actions, is you're going to draw 2 cards off a deck of 6 cards that were randomly dealt to you at the beginning of the round. And you're going to choose one of those 2 actions. You're going to get 6 actions per round instead of 10 actions. And the cards are multi-use cards. When they're drawn into your hand, they're used as dice that you can use to do one of the basic actions of Castles of Burgundy. There is going to be a market of cards out in the middle of the board. There are 6 rows with a card at the beginning that represents which dice they are. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then randomly at the start of the round, there will be some cards distributed amongst those. So you can either use the dice in your hand to buy one of those cards out on the table and put it into a reserve, just like the regular Castles of Burgundy game. Once it's in your reserve, the card has a dice number on it. So you could play one of those cards in your hand using the dice number to match the card that you want to play into your tableau. Or you can do a couple other things. You can use the dice to just take workers, for example, take up to 2 workers. So a lot of this feels very much like the basic Castles of Burgundy game, but instead of playing tiles onto a board, you're building this tableau. Why are you doing that? Just like in Castles of Burgundy, as you play these cards in your tableau, they're going to give you some immediate benefit most of the time. Most of those are going to be something simple like, getting a free action, getting more workers, getting a certain type of card out of the tableau in the middle. Very similar to Castles of Burgundy. But also, there's a little bit of a set collection element. At the end of the game, the cards all have a number printed on them. And you have to have a set of 3 in order to actually get the point number printed on them. So most of your basic buildings will have a 3 on it. If you get 3 buildings by the end of the game, it's going to be worth 3 points. If you get 3, animal cards, it's going to be worth 4 points, etc. So there's a little bit more about trying to collect certain sets and fighting other people for those sets versus Castles of Burgundy, where you're trying to race for those regions of your board and trying to fill out regions and things like that. There's also a little bit of a race element, just like in Castles of Burgundy. If you're the first person to get a set of 3 of a specific type of card, you're going to get a 1-point bonus. If you're the first person to get a card of each type, you're going to get a 4-point bonus. Second person would get 3, third would get 2, etc. So you're racing for these different elements. You're trying to optimize, get the best benefits that work for you. This was pretty good, I think, for one reason. I mean, it was a little bit quicker to set up, get started, a little quicker to play through, a much smaller box presence. Obviously, this would be easy to travel with. The one slight turnoff for me is that as a card game, it had a lot of table space taken up. And so it didn't really feel like a more compact experience or presence. The game setup and teardown was a little bit quicker, so that was a benefit. But there's also a high degree of just clutter when you just have these rows and columns and stacks of cards everywhere on the board that turns me off a little bit versus having a board with specific places to put things. So overall, I'm glad I picked it up. I think this will be a game that is a good fit in some situations. I'll probably throw this in my luggage every time we go on a little trip. We'll be able to find half an hour and bust this out and play. It'll play a little quicker than the basic game of Castle of Burgundy. But I'll be surprised if it very often finds space on the table when we're at home, when we have Castle of Burgundy in our game room and we could pull that out instead. I think the basic original version is just a little bit more interesting, a little bit more less cluttered, a little less cluttered, I guess that'd be the right term. But this card-based version is, again, very compact, a nice alternative to it. I had fun with it. I think I will be going back to it in the right situations. That was Castle of Burgundy, the card game. If you'd like to listen to our to anything else that we have to say about games, you can find us at the Board Game Hot Takes podcast. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at BG_Hot Takes or on our Facebook group, the Board Game Hot Takes group on Facebook. Until next time, take care, everybody.
Hey there, Norm here from the Cardboard Conjecture podcast. And what have I been playing recently? What you been playing? Just last night in the Gamer's Garage Wednesday night game, Pixie Queen. It was Jordan's turn to pick, and he selected Pixie Queen. Came out 2017, published by Bard Centrum Gear, a game brewer, and designed by Rudy Suitgens. Oh, I'm so sorry, I mispronounced that one. 2 to 5 players, 60 to 120 minutes, and it is. I've heard about this game before. And I've heard it described as kind of a nasty game because everyone's getting kind of chipped up a little bit. And so my initial thoughts before we even played this is my background knowledge of this is I always thought of this as kind of like a take that game. So it never really, got close to my attention periphery. And but this is what I love about Gamer's Garage. We take, we roll the D20 and see who gets to bring the next choice. So I'll play games that I would have never considered. And I have to say, now, I mean, the game itself, let me kind of describe it. It's like the whole fantasy pixie things. And there's a pixie queen, and she's nasty and demanding. And basically, this game is, like a good Euro. The most victory points at the end wins the game. But what happens is it's not take that, because you're not necessarily, like Risk, where you're going in and you're just destroying somebody's, property or country or border. This one is more so everything just chips away at you. There's if you don't get this done, you lose this many points. If you don't do this, you lose this many points. At the end of the round, basically, you know how it's the opposite of point salad. It's point thrashing, because one of the scheduled checklists in the round is taking lashes. And if you have so many pixies still in your I guess home base, you lose some points. If you don't go climbing up the I think it's the silver and the gold tracks, you lose some more points. If you don't donate to the food, the preferential food that you're guessing that the Pixie Queen wants, you get penalized again. And that's interesting. It's interesting the way that that point structure works. I kind of dug it. Another thing too about the Pixies is there's also this kind of pyramid race, because as I said, like picture yourself a pyramid, and you have everybody's starting point is like little pixie nest at the bottom, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 levels. And the 5th level is the solo Pixie Queen spot. And if you get there at the end of the round and are able to advance that spot, you get to, now this is where I've discovered with the meat of the game, are getting these rewards. There are rewards for feeding the entire pixie population. There are rewards for summiting and being the solo person left in the Pixie Queen spot. There are also a set of point value rewards, and I'll quickly tell you how that works, of cashing in gold for gold rings. And how that works is, in the feeding part, it only takes one of each resource. If you can donate that plus add an extra one to this chain, you get to take 4 points, and then it goes 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 10. And that chain, the more people go to that spot and take that action and increase this chain of donated food items and resources, that's the point value going up. Huge points in there if you can sneak your way into there all the time. The same thing with the Pixie Queen. The first one there gets 10 points. The next one, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, right? So the decreasing value. And then on the gold key one, same thing. The first one to forge a key, forge a ring, gets 10 points, and then it goes down. Game ends when either one of those things loses its 5, I believe there's 5 or 6 victory point chits, or you finish the entire 7 rounds, I believe. The fact that I can remember all of those details from one play last night tells me that it's still sitting in my head, which tells me that I'm not really done exploring this game yet. Now, I didn't even say if I liked it or if I didn't like it. I think I like it. I might try to false out of that a little higher. Wait, dogs will start barking. I think I like that game. Now that I understand that it's a reverse point salad, where it's just mitigating the thrashing that you're going to get of each round, and it's one of those great games where you can't do everything. You have to pick one thing and lean into it, right? Or pick one and a little bit of something and lean into it. But the balanced approach gets you a balanced, lame score at the end of the game. But like I said, to Dave and Jordan, because I know Jordan loves this game, because immediately he's like, what do you think of it? And I honestly said that about midway of the game, that's when I kind of went, oh, okay, that's how, and then analyzed my state of the game and went, and I have no chance of winning. But I saw how, from where I was, I saw, okay, what can this do now? Now that I understand, I'm going to try and see if I can climb out of the hole that I created for myself. So that being said, I want to play this again. And that's coming from, like, I'm lucky if I play a game 4 times ever, not just in a year. Pixie Queen, designed by Rudy Sengens and published by Bard Centrum Gear and Game Brewer. That takes us to perfect time. We're getting to about an hour. Thank you so much for listening to all of what we had to say about the games that we've been playing recently, and I hope you've learned that you like or dislike certain games, because that's important. We're doing homework. We're always doing homework, but don't consider it homework, right? And of course, to all the content creators who take the time to time, that's probably in my head the most valuable resource. And every week we have some wonderful people contributing their thoughts on games. And thank you so much. And of course, that being said, keep your stick on the ice and take care out there, eh?